The hospital room was cold, sterile, the air thick with the smell of antiseptic and quiet despair. Dad lay in the bed, his frail hand clutching mine, his once vibrant eyes now clouded with pain and the weight of years. I sat beside him, my heart heavy with the grief that had become a constant companion. It had been a long road, the slow and agonizing descent into illness. My father, a self-made man who'd built his empire from the ground up, now lay at the mercy of a relentless disease that was slowly stealing his strength, his dignity, his very life. I was 36, married to Amelia for 8 years, with 2 beautiful children. As the only son, the weight of my father's legacy, both literal and figurative, pressed down on me with an almost physical force. You see, my dad wasn't just my father. He was a titan in the business world, his name synonymous with success, his fortune whispered about in hushed tones. And I, his only heir, had committed the cardinal sin of choosing my own path, a path that diverged sharply from the one he'd meticulously laid out for me. Dad had poured his heart and soul into building his construction empire, brick by literal brick. He'd started with nothing but a beat-up truck and an unwavering work ethic, transforming himself from a small-town contractor into a real estate mogul. He'd envisioned me, his only son, as the heir apparent, the one to carry the torch, to expand his empire, to ensure his legacy lived on. But my passions lay elsewhere, in the ethereal realm of music. While Dad dreamt of blueprints and concrete foundations, I dreamt of melodies, of harmonies, of the transformative power of a perfectly crafted song. Our clashes, when they came, were epic, fueled by his disappointment and my own stubborn refusal to conform to his expectations.
Music is a hobby, not a career.
He'd thunder, his voice booming through our sprawling house, each word a hammer blow to my carefully constructed dreams.
You have a responsibility, son, to your family, to your legacy.
I tried to explain, to make him understand that his definition of legacy, of success, didn't resonate with me. That my passion, my music, was not a rejection of him, but an expression of my own unique identity. But his disappointment, his disapproval, hung heavy between us, a wall we couldn't seem to breach. I'd married Amelia, a woman who, at least initially, had seemed to understand my artistic aspirations, who had encouraged me to pursue my music alongside my more stable and lucrative career as a software developer. Then, 3 years ago, Dad's kidneys started to fail. The news hit me like a punch in the gut. Suddenly, the years of arguments, the unspoken resentment, seemed trivial in the face of his mortality. I threw myself into being his caregiver, accompanying him to dialysis appointments, running errands, trying to make his remaining days as comfortable as possible. My routine became a delicate balancing act, juggling work deadlines, family obligations, and the ever-increasing demands of caring for my ailing father. Amelia, initially supportive, grew increasingly impatient.
"He's not your responsibility, Mark,"
she'd say, her voice laced with a mixture of frustration and resentment.
"He made his choices. He has nurses, doctors. You're letting your life pass you by."
I tried to explain, to make her understand the guilt that gnawed at me, the need to make amends, to bridge the gulf that separated us, even if it was just in the twilight of his life.
"He'll never be happy, Mark."
She'd sigh, her patience wearing thin.
"Not until you give him what he wants. The business. Your life."
She was right, of course, but I couldn't bring myself to sacrifice my own happiness, my own dreams, for a man who seemed determined to die on his own terms, his resentment a shield against any attempt at reconciliation. The tension at home escalated, our arguments becoming more frequent, more bitter. And then, one evening, as I sat by my father's bedside, Amelia packed a suitcase, her movements sharp, angry.
"I can't do this anymore, Mark,"
she said, her voice cold, devoid of the warmth that had once drawn me to her.
"I need more. We need more. And you're too busy trying to win your father's love to realize that you're losing your own family."
She walked out then, leaving me alone with my dying father and the crushing weight of my choices. The weeks that followed were a blur of hospital visits, sleepless nights, and the slow, agonizing decline of a once powerful man. My career, my music, my own needs, they all faded into the background as I devoted myself to caring for my father. Then, one crisp autumn morning, Dad took his final breath, his hand clasped tightly in mine. The grief, when it came, was overwhelming, a tidal wave of regret and unspoken words that threatened to drown me. As I navigated the surreal aftermath of his death, I made a shocking discovery. Dad's lawyer, a man whose veins seemed to run cold with liquid nitrogen informed me that I was the sole beneficiary of my father's estate. Not just the construction business, but properties, investments, a fortune that dwarfed my wildest imagination, billions. Apparently, my dad had a last-minute change of heart, a desire to right the wrongs of the past, to acknowledge the son he'd pushed away. The irony wasn't lost on me. My refusal to bend to his will, the very thing that had driven a wedge between us, had ultimately secured my financial future. The news spread like wildfire, the media having a field day with the story of the estranged son who'd inherited a fortune. And then, she reappeared. Amelia. She stood on my doorstep, her eyes red-rimmed, her face a mask of contrition.
Mark,
She whispered, her voice choked with emotion.
I was wrong. I'm so sorry. I know I wasn't there for you, for your father. But I want to come home. We can make this work. For the kids, for us.
I stared at her, her words washing over me, carrying the faint scent of her familiar perfume, a scent that once brought me comfort, now tinged with the bitter aftertaste of betrayal. She hadn't come back for me, for the man who had sat by his father's bedside, heartbroken and alone. She had come back for the money, for the lifestyle, for the security that my father's fortune provided. And in that moment, I understood. The polite fiction that we tell ourselves, that love conquers all, that money can't buy happiness, it crumbles in the face of true loss, of raw, unfiltered grief. It's too late, Amelia, I said, my voice devoid of anger, only a profound sadness. The man you're looking for, he doesn't exist anymore. And with that, I closed the door, shutting out her pleas, her tears, her carefully crafted performance of remorse. The silence that followed was deafening. I leaned against the door, my forehead pressed against the cool wood, Amelia's muffled sobs echoing from the other side. A part of me, the part that still remembered the woman I fell in love with, the woman who'd held my hand during our first dance, who whispered promises of forever as we stood at the altar, ached with a dull, persistent pain. But that pain was dwarfed by the overwhelming sense of relief that washed over me. The charade was over. The mask of normalcy, the pretense of a happy marriage, I no longer had to play the part. I turned away from the door, my gaze falling on a framed picture of Sarah and me, taken on our honeymoon in Italy. We were standing on a sun-drenched balcony, the azure sea stretching out behind us, our smiles genuine, our eyes reflecting a love that felt, at the time, as boundless as the ocean. The photo was a painful reminder of what I'd lost, but it also served as a strange source of comfort. In that moment, I realized that my love for Sarah, while forever a part of me, no longer defined my present or dictated my future. I was free. Free from the weight of Amelia's expectations, free from the burden of my father's legacy, free to finally forge my own path, to embrace the dreams I'd buried for so long. The inheritance, once a source of resentment, now felt like an opportunity, a chance to create something meaningful, to honor my father's memory in a way that resonated with my soul. I poured myself into music, my long-neglected guitar a lifeline, the melodies that poured out of me a raw expression of grief, anger, and a newfound sense of purpose. I created a foundation in my father's name, channeling his wealth towards supporting young musicians, providing them with the opportunities I had craved, the encouragement I had lacked. The irony wasn't lost on me. My father, who had spent his life building tangible structures, would be remembered through the intangible beauty of music, through the dreams he'd dismissed, the passions he'd failed to understand. News of the foundation spread, drawing musicians from all over the country, their stories, their struggles, mirroring my own. I found solace in mentoring them and guiding them through the treacherous waters of the music industry, in witnessing their passion, their dedication, their unyielding belief in the transformative power of music. And as I watched them perform, their music filling the air with a vibrancy that had long been absent from my own life, I realized that my father's legacy, however unintended, had found its true expression. One evening, after a particularly moving performance by a young violinist whose talent rivaled any I'd ever witnessed, a woman approached me, her eyes filled with tears.
Thank you.
She whispered, her voice thick with emotion.
My son, he wouldn't have had this chance without you, without your father's generosity.
I looked at her son, his face glowing with the exhilaration of sharing his gift with the world, and I felt a warmth spread through me, a feeling that transcended the grief, the anger, the bitter residue of betrayal. It was a feeling of peace, of acceptance, of knowing that even in the midst of loss, even when life throws us curveballs that shatter our world, there is always hope, always the possibility of redemption, of finding meaning in the most unexpected places. Amelia, I heard, had eventually remarried, her life a carefully curated tableau of social events and superficial happiness. She never contacted me again, her silence a testament to her shame, her realization that the life she craved, the security she sought, could never be found in the cold embrace of wealth or the fleeting validation of a man who had never truly loved her. As for me, I found love again, a love that blossomed slowly, organically, grounded in shared values and mutual respect, in the quiet comfort of two souls who had weathered the storms of life and emerged, scarred but stronger. My life wasn't perfect. There were still days when the grief ambushed me, when the memories of what I'd lost threatened to overwhelm me. But I had learned to navigate those dark waters, to find solace in the music that pulsed through my veins, in the faces of the young musicians whose dreams I helped nurture, in the love that surrounded me, a love that was real, unyielding, built on a foundation far stronger than money or status or societal expectations. And sometimes, in the quiet of my studio, as I strum my guitar, the melodies flowing through me like a healing balm, I think about my father, about the long and complicated journey that had brought us to this point. I'd imagine him, standing in the wings, a ghost of a smile on his lips, as he listened to the music, the echoes of his own unfulfilled dreams finding expression in the hearts of those who dared to chase their own passions. And in those moments, I knew that forgiveness, like love, transcended the boundaries of life and death, that even the most strained relationships could find a measure of peace, a fragile harmony, in the shared language of the human heart.